was sitting on the family room couch one July evening reading the newspaper when my 15-year-old son Josh came in. He plopped down across from me, picked up the remote, and turned on the Phillies baseball game. We smiled at each other, then I went back to my paper, and he settled in for the game. Not long afterwards, I heard him say, "It's funny, when the Marlins were here in Philadelphia, we couldn't get tickets. But when the Phillies go to Miami to play them, there are all kinds of seats. And the Marlins are the World Series champs." I looked at my son in his Phillies pajamas, riveted to the screen in front of him. Oh, how I loved him. I put down my paper. "Josh, if that's the case, why don't we go to Miami?" "What?" "You heard me." "Really?" "Sure. Why not?" I'm not a fan of baseball, but I am a fan of Josh. He's the youngest of my 3 sons, and he was the only one still at home. He's quiet, very quiet, an introvert. So I wanted to seize on the opportunity to encourage a passion of his, something my parents had never done for me. And I wanted to create a memory the 2 of us could share for the rest of our lives. 2 weeks later, we're driving down Collins Ave in Miami. In the passenger seat, Josh is tossing a ball up and down into his glove. He had brought the ball, hoping to get it signed so he could put it on the bookshelf next to his most prized possession, a ball signed by Phillies first baseman Ryan Howard that he kept in a special case. We were off to a perfect start. Soon he pulled up to a 15-story white stucco building, the Delano Hotel owned by Madonna. A friend had told me it was the place to stay in Miami. The lobby was filled with fit young men in white linen and tiny shorts. After checking in, Josh waited outside the gift shop with our suitcases while I went in to get a Miami Herald. As I handed the woman, the cashier, my money, I saw behind her peppermint peckers, penis gummies, and gummy handcuffs. I grabbed my Miami Herald and steered Josh toward our room. My friend hadn't been exaggerating the white on white decor of the room. Everything in the room was white except a Granny Smith apple that was resting eye level on a white metal ring to the left of the door. I wondered if the apple were for eating or for decorating. Before I could even pull my suitcase into the room, Josh had rushed to the safe and locked up our baseball tickets as if they were the Hope Diamond. Then he picked up the remote, sat on the bed and said, "Mommy, can we watch Lord of the Rings now?" Josh had brought his favorite movies with him, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm not a fan of Tolkien, but I am a fan of Josh. So I sat back on the bed and watched. And after 3 hours, all I could tell you is that a little man finds a ring. Then it was time to be off to Dolphin Stadium, getting there 2 hours early for batting practice. The stadium was pretty much empty when we got there, and we easily found our seats, which were halfway down behind home plate. Josh sat, looked around and said, "Wow, these seats are great." Then he pulled out his scorecard and pencil and opened his bag of peanuts. Everyone else who was there in the stadium was down front hanging over the railings trying to get autographs. "Josh, do you want to go down and try to get your ball signed?" "No, I think I just want to sit here today and watch." Finally, after 2 hours, the game began. Josh hunched forward like he does at every game, with his scorecard and his pencil. It was an exciting game. The Phillies were winning, the Phillies were losing, the Phillies were winning. And then in the 4th inning, rain clouds came in. It didn't take long for me to find my way inside and sit down on the wet concourse. I hoped Josh was having a good time. After a while, people started streaming past me towards the exit. and Josh found me and told me there was a rain delay. No Abel has ever left a baseball game before the last out has been played, so I didn't even suggest it. Instead, the two of us sat on the concourse together in silence, not talking, because talking isn't Josh's style. After 90 minutes, the tarps were lifted from the field, and I followed Josh back into the stadium, and because most people had left, we were sitting right behind home plate. At 1 a.m., the Phillies lost. I put my hand on Josh's knee and squeezed him. "Oh, that's okay, Mommy. They play 162 games a year. They can't win every one. We have 2 more games, and these seats behind home plate were really cool." It was 2:30 by the time we found our way back to the hotel, and we went to sleep. The next morning on the way to breakfast, we passed the swimming pool. It looked like a music video, with bronze top bodies posing in skimpy bathing suits around the cabanas. On the way back, after breakfast, on the way back to our room, I caught a glimpse of the blue Atlantic Ocean and the glistening white beach. I love beaches, but I loved Josh even more, and it was time to watch the second Lord of the Rings trilogy. And all I could tell you after that movie was that the ring the little man had found was still causing him problems. Then it was time for the second game. It was pretty much a repeat of the previous night, except the Phillies got off to a bad start. And when the clouds came in the 4th inning, it was an all-out downpour. Not a sprinkling and then rain, just an all-out downpour. And at 90 minutes, Josh and I were still sitting on the concourse waiting for the downpour to end. Over the years, I've tried to learn to be comfortable with Josh's quietness, but sitting there on the concourse, watching him roll the ball around in his glove, I couldn't help wondering what he was thinking. Was he still having a good time? Did he wish he were somewhere else? He looked up at me, shrugged, and smiled. After 2.5 hours, the rain delay was over, and we went back into the abandoned stadium. But the 2.5-hour rest didn't seem to have helped the Phillies, and at 1:30 in the morning, they lost their second game in a row. Josh gathered his things, stood up, and said, "Well, I guess we still have tomorrow. Maybe they'll win one for us then." And we went back to the hotel and went to sleep. The next day, we got up early because our third and final game was a day game. I opened the white Venetian blinds and saw blue sky and sun. There'd be no rain delay today. We jumped in the car and headed back to Dolphin Stadium. We sat down in our seats, and almost immediately, sweat was dripping down us, soaking our clothes and collecting in puddles around our seats. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 80% humidity. It was Miami in August, and it was hot. After a quick 2 innings, the Phillies were down 6-0. And Josh turned to me, sweat dripping into his eyes, and he said, "Mommy, can we leave? They're not even trying." This trip had already become a bad memory. His mother had dragged him to Miami in August to sit in the rain and then the sun to see his team be crushed. "Are you sure you want to leave?" I asked him. He nodded. I looked at Josh, slumped in his seat, and I saw the baseball in the glove in his lap. "Okay, we'll go, but just a minute." And I grabbed the ball from his lap, and I ran down the steps 2 at a time to the bullpen. And then I climbed up on the railing, grabbed onto the net with both hands, still clutching the ball in my right hand. Please, sir, I called down to a lone Phillies player who was standing in the bullpen with his back to me. A security guard came running over. "Ma'am, you've got to get down out of the net and off of that railing." I looked back at the Phillies player. He was now looking up at me. Please, sir, we came all the way from Philadelphia. Will you please sign our ball? The man smiled. Sure, toss it over. Them's good folks up in Philadelphia. And he signed the ball and threw it back to me. 3 by 3, I took the stairs back up to Josh, and I handed him the ball. Who is he? Who is he? I said. He seemed really nice. Oh, it's Jeff Gary. He's some relief pitcher they brought up from the minors last night. But thank you. And we left the stadium. On his mother's watch, Josh had broken the family tradition of never leaving a baseball before the last out had been played. When we got back to the hotel, I asked him if he wanted to watch the last Lord of the Rings movie. No, I just want to go to sleep. The next day, when we got home to Philadelphia, I just left my suitcase in the doorway. I didn't feel like unpacking. I didn't feel like doing much of anything. And I dropped onto the family room couch with my newspaper and opened the art section. Josh headed off to his bedroom. I hadn't even made it through the first half of the movie review when I heard Josh's voice. Mommy? I looked up. He was standing in the family room doorway, holding the ball I had gotten signed for him in one hand and his favorite ball in its case in the other hand. Would it be okay if I took the Ryan Howard ball out and instead used the special case for our ball? He smiled, and I smiled too. I thought we had struck out, but we had hit a home run.